Hello, everyone. Greetings. Good day to you. Good evening to you, depending upon which part of the world you reside. My name is Shakti Saran, and I'm the founder of Shaktify, a think tank. And Shaktify's vision is to embrace a culture of oneness and to live in harmony with Mother Nature. And our mission is to empower change makers. I'd like to welcome our audience today who hail from 22 countries besides India, from as far as Nicaragua to Australia. The main objective of today's webinar is to right-size the value of meditation as a tool for self-transformation at a personal level and beyond. The noted Swiss psychologist Carl Jung wrote that there could be no salvation for humankind without individual salvation. Today's webinar is an inquiry into the causal connections between the reality that exists within us, on one hand, and our well-being, as well as the well-being of our humanity and our planet, on the other hand. I am deeply honored to have with us today Dr. Paul Fleischman. He's not only an accomplished psychiatrist, although retired, but a gifted writer, author, and a Vipassana meditation practitioner and teacher in the tradition of S N Goenka. He commenced learning Vipassana meditation under the guidance of S N Goenka in 1974. Dr. Fleischman will dwell on establishing the alignment between meditation and science, the role of the body-mind connection, and the relevance of meditation to social progress. I have read many of Dr. Fleischman's books, which I discovered to be a goldmine of insights. What struck me most about his books was his ability to seamlessly connect the practice of Vipassana meditation with system science and the events that shape our world. He achieves this by mingling lineages of Eastern and Western thought and bringing them in profound harmony. Dr. Fleischman, would you like to say a few words?
Well, give me a lead in, Shakti. Where should we begin?
Yes, anything that you'd like to add to what I've said.
Okay. One of the important things that inspired me was coming upon teachings from the era of the Buddha, reference to the Buddha, that were uncannily prescient about discoveries that were going to happen 2,500 years later in Western science. That's a remarkable piece of cultural disjunction followed by cultural union. It took such a long time for the different cultures to cohere on certain important principles. For example, generally people see the universe around them as building things up, which is true. Not saying that doesn't happen. But Einstein said the single most important law of science that can never be shaken is the law of entropy, which is that things disaggregate. Well, that was the principle of the Buddha's teaching 2,500 years ago. It is possible, of course, Einstein had some familiarity with Buddhism due to being an educated European in the 20th century, but he didn't have much familiarity for sure. It was mostly secondhand derivative texts, and Einstein's discovery, or Einstein's reference to entropy, which he did not discover, of course, part of thermodynamics, his reference to that is based purely upon science. So we see a remarkable early important anchoring position that the Buddha made, anchoring us to the laws about the way the universe works and trying to build our personal harmony, our personal life well-being based upon integrating ourselves with the way that the universe actually scientifically can be shown to work. That's different than building our harmony and our happiness based upon a psychological, wish-fulfilling fantasy that has no empirical connection to the laws of science. So I would see that as maybe a starting place for our conversation, and it was certainly it was confirming, and um, um, it helped me go forward, because if I found a meditation, felt it was important, liked practicing it, but felt it was anti-scientific or didn't really connect to the 11 years I spent in schools after high school, I wouldn't have been able to pursue it. So that discovery was a very great gift, and it's a powerful statement about the validity of both things, that is, of science and of the Buddha's teaching.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Fleischman. That's an extremely insightful introduction to our session today. What we're going to do is just take a very slight pause. I was waiting for people to come on board. We're going to do a short poll, just a very quick poll on. There's just two questions, and the objective of this poll is really to understand the profile of our audience, and it'll take us just barely 2 to 3 minutes. So I'm going to start running this poll, and it's a poll which there's two questions to it, and the first question is, members of the audience, if you could please answer this poll. The first one has got to do with your engagement with meditation, and the second one has got to do with your familiarity with system science. All right, 2/3 of the participants have already entered their answers almost. We give it another minute, a minute and a half. All right. If there's anyone else who would like to attempt this, some people have chosen not to participate in the poll, and that's fine. But I'm going to share the results. I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results so we get a better sense of the. All right. So this is what I trust you can see my screen. You can see the results. So the engagement with meditation, 42% have said that they are meditators and practice Vipassana meditation as taught by S N Goenka. 30% are meditators and practice meditation in some other tradition, and 28% have said they're not meditators. And the second poll was on familiarity with systems, nonlinear science. 34%, this is fairly even. Roughly 1/3 have said, I'm familiar with systems thinking. Another 1/3 have said, 36% have said, somewhat familiar with systems thinking, and 30% have said, not familiar with systems thinking. All right, so that's a good mix that we have. And so we're going to go straight into our session today. But I want to make two, quick announcements before we start the conversation. And that is, the first is if we have received a lot of questions, as at the time when people registered. So, but those of you who would still like to pose a question, please do so in the Q&A box. And also, because of the paucity of time, please avoid posing any questions on the practice or the technique of Vipassana meditation, and keep the questions relevant to the topic of for discussion. Yeah, thank you for your understanding. So that's the first announcement. The second announcement is that I have enabled the transcript of this webinar. And if anyone would like to save a transcript before exiting the webinar, you're welcome to do so. All right, now let's get started with Dr. Fleischman. I'd like to start this webinar by asking you, one or two personal questions. And the first question is your affinity with Vipassana meditation. How did Vipassana meditation come about in your life? Can you tell us something more about that?
Sure, sure. I knew nothing about either Indian culture and civilization nor meditation until I went to college. I just by happenstance, not by any intelligent action on my part, went to a college that emphasized the study of Indian culture and civilization. I was immediately captured by that and realized this thing that they're talking about, meditation, that's something I need. I want. As soon as I hear it, it sounds good. No way to get it in America in the mid 1960s. So I put on my fantasy life goals to go to India and study meditation. Not possible. I didn't have money to fly to India in the mid 1960s. People didn't travel as much as they do today, and it was a rare thing to go between India and the United States, particularly if you were only a student. In medical school, I lucked into a fellowship to go to India to study Ayurveda. I went to Mumbai and did study at Podar and a number of other places throughout India. And at that time, I took some meditation instructions. In retrospect, I would say were lovely but somewhat feeble. Then I decided I had to get back to India to get a better avenue, a better teaching, a better teacher about meditation. Um, Before that happened, I had to train as a psychiatrist. And in those years, I met Susan, who became my wife. And when I completed my residency, the two of us went to India with the gossip only, gossip, just hearsay, that there was a guy named Mr. Goenka who was teaching a kind of meditation, but he taught in English. He was very able to dialogue with Western students, answer questions, give replies. He was familiar with Western culture and could shape his teaching to be more compatible with our backgrounds. And so we took our first Vipassana course under Goenkaji in 1974. And before we did that, we did try look into other teachers, many of whom felt very culturally foreign to us. So Goenkaji was the man, teaching worked. We took our course, the course worked, and we felt, well, let's give this a trial. And we're not totally committed, but let's keep giving it a fair trial. The longer we kept giving it a fair trial, the more we got involved in the community of meditators that was developing here in the 1970s, 1980s. In the 1980s, I started going back to India, and then Susan eventually came with me, and I've made multiple trips to India over the years, taking courses with Goenkaji, eventually developing in this tradition and conducting courses and writing about it.
Wow, that's a long journey, and I want to ask you a follow-on question. Uh, has your experience as a psychiatrist helped you progress with your meditation practice? And are those who are not mental health professionals at a disadvantage?
No. The answer to the second part is no. There will be a paradox in my answer. Yes, the fact that I'm a psychiatrist helped me. No, if you're not a psychiatrist, it doesn't harm you at all. You may be 1,000 miles ahead of me. Why? What helps you as a meditator is the way that you live. If the way that you're living is contributory to the life of meditation, then that's helpful. So, what's contributory to the life of meditation? Well, one thing is thinking intelligently and with reference to yourself about the cause and effect relationship of the way you live to the outcome as it appears in your state of mind. If you're doing things that upset your state of mind, that's not going to help you with meditation. If you're living in such a way that it helps your state of mind, that will help you. I felt having a constructive, intelligent profession was helpful to me. Someone else might feel I stayed at home with my children or I worked as a carpenter. That was constructive to me. That helped my state of mind. So it's not being a psychiatrist, it's being engaged in something that's self-reflective and helpful to myself. Second part of being a psychiatrist that was helpful is it definitely is involved with helping other people. That's also helpful to the practice of meditation. So a person could be a housewife, a carpenter, a cosmologist, a nurse, and we could say, like being a psychiatrist, those things are helpful to meditation. Someone could be involved in something that they themselves experience, not my judgment, their judgment. They themselves experience as not wholesome, troubling, upsetting, not a good way of life. That will harm them in their path of meditation, and they may well want to change that. So psychiatry did help me a lot, but somebody else may have done something very opposite, very different, and got the same help. Somebody may have been a psychiatrist and gotten none of that help, given where they were working, how they were working, what it was developing in their minds as they practiced it.
True. Yeah, very good. Yeah, and different outputs for different inputs. For the same inputs could be, you could have different outputs for the same set of inputs. Yeah,
Yes,
interesting.
excellently rephrased. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah.
So we're going to move to our thematic section, and the first thematic section is really the relationship between meditation and science. So I'm going to dwell on that for a few minutes. And my first question to you in this thematic session, Dr. Fleischman, is on Homo sapiens. So we are at the peak of the evolutionary ladder. Does that mean that as a species we have reached the peak of evolution? Is there more to come? What's your view? What's just your opinion, your take on this?
Okay. Okay. Well, there are three different views that I juggle in my mind. So the most important answer is I don't know the answer to your question, but thoughts rise in my mind about it because it's obviously a very important question. So one thought is you say we're at the peak of evolution, but many evolutionists would not agree. So they might say there's nothing better about me or you than a bacteria. We're living things. We evolved on Earth. There's a lot of bacteria, and they're still evolving. It's not like they evolved and they stopped evolving, and then we evolved. They're still evolving. One of the evidences, sad evidences for that, is if an antibiotic is overused, the bacteria evolve, and and the antibiotic becomes useful. So they're still evolving. We're still evolving. We're not at any pinnacle. Seen from a cosmic standpoint, we're no more pinnacle. In fact, we're rarer, less common, and less long-lived than the bacterias. So one answer is we're not the pinnacle. So let's drop that attitude. Another, you asked me to say what I feel and what I think. Well, it's
Yes.
very hard for a human being not to feel superior to a bacteria. So I do. I do feel superior, even though I just told you it's not necessarily a rational belief. So, well, yes, we're the pinnacle. And what will happen next? There's two viewpoints that I juggle in my mind about that. And both are classic scientific viewpoints, not at all unique to me. One viewpoint is our evolution will require a long, sustained planet Earth to support our transformation into an increasingly socially compatible, well-intended, non-violent, non-self-protective group. And that evolution will require brain changes in fundamental things like our limbic system, our amygdala, places where we experience fear and the origins of aggression. and it's going to take a long time. Evolution of brains is slow and may take thousands or hundreds of thousands of years. Not overly optimistic viewpoint. But there's a third viewpoint. This would be the viewpoint associated with Stephen Jay Gould, who pointed out that human beings may never biologically evolve in the future because we're so flexible and adaptive through cultural transformations by changing our homes, changing our internets, changing our artificial intelligence, changing everything about our situation, that evolution will not require biological change. It will only regard cultural change. And that could be fairly rapid. We're now sitting on the cusp of multiple transformative cultural changes in our environment, which everybody's very aware of. Things like nuclear weapons on the downside, artificial intelligence maybe on the upside and or the downside. And our evolution can be rapid and effective through these cultural transformations. Should we be optimistic about that? Maybe.
And could meditation be a segue for this cultural and social evolution that you refer to?
Well, that's my personal hope. I would consider that to be a strategic investment I've made in that belief. So I've placed my life behind that belief system. Is it true? Of course, I don't know the future, so I don't know if it's true. But yes, that could be so. Why? Because it could impact both areas that I talked about, number two and number three. Number two, meaning it could change our biology, because meditation definitely uses brain parts. And if all people or many people or large numbers of people begin to meditate and produce offspring that are geared to meditate and don't produce offspring that are not geared to meditate, there could be biological evolution driven by meditation. Or we could use the Stephen Jay Gould attitude, the thing I call the third part of my mental juggling, which is, well, meditation definitely changes our culture, no question about that. No if or but about that. So that's a very probable cause of cultural evolution is a wider spread use of meditation to change ourselves and change our culture without actually going as deep as changing our biological evolution. That's what I personally am invested in. I put my life behind that. I think it's reasonable. I don't have proof that it's true.
That's deeply insightful. Thank you so much, for that response. So I'm going to move to the second question. I took to Vipassana meditation just a few years ago, and one of the things about Vipassana meditation is that you are observing your body sensations, the arising and passing away of body sensations. Now, to what extent are there parallels between what we observe in Vipassana, the arising and passing away of body sensations, and with the impermanence of mind and matter that was discovered by quantum physicists? What are the parallels?
There are strong parallels, but there's a hesitancy I have to equating them. The strong parallels are we now understand, those of us who are educationally derivative of modern science, understand that the world of physical matter consists of constantly changing, constantly transforming pseudo particles, which are actually forms, we could call it congealed energy. The fundamental discovery of Einstein that energy and matter are essentially the same thing, so that matter has a form of energy. And that's also phrased as wave particle change, that we're both waves and particles in our entire body. And so when we're meditating, we're looking upon a world that's non non substance. It's something that is always fluid, always has at its base wavelets, vibrations, waves, non stuff energy that is now congealed as matter, but will continue to function as a wave function. That view, however, needs to be qualified by the fact that when we're meditating, are we actually experiencing those quantum changes, or are the sensations that we non-Buddha, non-perfected meditators are experiencing, or those sensations at a much more, we could say, grosser level, we could say biological level, rather than quantum physical level? So in the 70s, some beautiful books were popular, and I know you're very aware of them, Shakti, about our becoming aware of our quantum nature in our minds and bodies. And I certainly think that's a truism. But whether we actually experience it as we're meditating, I would say, unless you're telling me you are getting close to the Buddha's own insight, very probably the sensations you're experiencing when you're meditating are things that your nerves are experiencing in your tissues. These are much larger domain, grosser systems transformations than the quantum level.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fleischman. I have one more question for you on meditation and science. When we look at system science, emergence is a key pillar of system science. It's intrinsic to system science. The whole phenomenon of emergence, what does it mean to you, and how can we relate that to meditation?
Beautiful. Thank you for throwing me that question. I would say when I discovered the concept of emergence, which is as you've pointed out, a commonly held, widely pervaded view of the way systems work today, when I discovered that, I felt just excitement and relief. And finally, some scientists had pointed out to me what I was trying to conceptualize and not been able to do without the help of modern systems thinkers. So emergence means that as systems develop complexity, instead of there being an increased use of scientific laws, for example, particles can go to the left, they can go to the right. So science now says, well, particles are moving in two directions. Particles can move in four directions. So now we have a more complex science. Now we have 10 particles that can move in four directions. Now we have a more complex science. But it's all rooted in the same scientific laws. The scientific laws don't change. That's the pre-emergent view. The view of emergence is that as your system becomes more complicated, you have 10 particles, you have 100 particles, you have 1 billion particles moving in four directions. At a certain point, the laws of their interactions will change dramatically, and new laws will emerge in their interactions. And those new laws have emerged in the universe through the interactions that are happening in that system. So the laws of the universe are changing as we live. And in particular, in systems as complex as human beings, we consist of either hundreds of billions or trillions of atoms every minute. The interactions between them are so complicated that they're fomenting new systems, new laws of nature. And we are emerging into having different properties than exist in other aspects of the universe that aren't the human mind and body. Therefore, we are transforming the universe as we live. That's one possible way of concluding with emergent thinking. That's the way I experienced it when I came upon the aha moment of hearing about emergence.
Thank you. We're going to move to our second session, second section, which is on meditation, psychology, and individual transformation. And my first question to you, Dr. Fleischman, is that today, for a first-time meditator, there's a dime a dozen meditation alternatives that are available. It's like a whole supermarket of meditation approaches, different schools. So, how should a meditator, a first-time meditator, determine which school is most appropriate for oneself? And why do you emphasize meditating in a singular tradition?
Okay. So let's start by saying I don't want to say one meditation is better than the other, creating a competition or a hierarchy or a narcissistic proclamation that what I do is better than what someone else does. So instead of comparing, like, well, Vipassana is better in this way or Vipassana is superior in this way, let's just look at what Vipassana is, and implicitly people can form a comparative statement with other meditations that they may be aware of. So Vipassana in the tradition of S N Goenka is taught exclusively in 10-day retreats. Well, that right there is something that people are going to ring up and go, that sounds fantastic, or that's ridiculous. I'm never going to do that. You start out with a hard, long commitment. That's different than going to a class in a gym in the high school in the evening where you start learning meditation by making the commitment to show up for 1 hour. So the intensity of the commitment is one thing. Another feature is the lineage. Who's teaching it? What's their background? What's their knowledge? So I came upon Goenkaji, a very remarkable person. I'm one of the remaining lucky people who took her first course with Goenkaji and subsequent courses with Goenkaji. Literally, he's there. A very unusual figure, energetic, uh, filled with delight and humor, very remarkably linguistically sophisticated. In one sentence, he might be quoting from English, Hindi, Sanskrit, and Pali, referring constantly back and forth to give you the best understanding of a particular term he's using. Wow, what a mind. So the teacher and the lineage he's in, he was in a lineage with Uba Khin and other people with equal linguistic agility to interpret texts, make them make sense to me, and also demonstrate rather impressive erudition. The next thing is, um, can you do it? Can you take a 10-day course? A, can you get the time from your job, from your family? And the second thing, it requires certain degrees of physical and mental health. So, can you sit up for 10 days? Can you wake up at 4:30 a.m. and stay awake until you go to bed at 9 o'clock at night? Can you have only a light meal in the evening? So there's a certain physical, mental rigor that one has to ask themselves, are they capable of? To me, the appeal of Vipassana was its doable rigor. If somebody said the rigor of this other technique is go to a monastery in a mountain area and stay there for 3 years without a blanket and learn meditation, I would say I lack the physical rigor for that technique. If someone would say to me, go to a class in Boston where someone teaches for 2 hours and you get the technique, I'd say it sounds likable, but maybe it's a little facile or superficial, not rigorous enough for me. So I found in the Vipassana technique something that seemed authentic and true intellectually based upon the scholarship, and true practically based upon when you start practicing it, you realize this technique is carrying me into new dimensions of awareness that I wouldn't have right away. As you start it, you're aware, man, this is taking me somewhere I have not been before. I would stop there.
Uh, an associated question with this is to this is how does one ensure that a meditation is safe and will work for the meditator's benefit? So you've spoken about rigor, yeah, but what about the safety aspect? How does can one in any way have a form a an idea as to how whether this is going to work or not? What should one really be looking for to make sure that it is a safe option for people?
Great question. So I would like to take a little step out of our conversation and refer the listeners to the essays I've written on the safety of meditation. The reason I put it that way and like to make the referral here at this moment to a text is the issue is a little complicated and should, exactly as you implied, Shakti, this decision should be considered by everybody who wants to go to a Vipassana 10-day retreat for the first time. Is it safe for me to go? And there's a grid. By grid, I mean a number of questions that intersect that a person can and should ask themselves. Furthermore, the Vipassana tradition now, I say now because this was not true when I started, but now offers assistant teachers answers to those questions. So a person can apply to a course and say, I have this problem. Let's say my problem is I'm diabetic and I need to take insulin. Can I take insulin at that course? Can I take it 4 times a day? Can I measure my blood? Well, will it be safe for me to go there? What about this thing of not eating? I'm a diabetic and I need to eat 3 times a day. My meals have to be the right caloric amount. I can't eat too many calories. Can't eat too few calories. That would change my insulin level that I should take. Is this all going to be arrangeable? Will this be safe for me? And the answer is, that's a great question to ask somebody else. You don't have to decide on your own. There's an assistant teacher who should be able to chat with you, whether the chat is by telephone, by an internet vehicle, and help you get an answer. And the answer might include, well, how diabetic are you? How much insulin do you take? How many times a day, etc. And an answer will come up. Of course, the Vipassana meditators don't eat a meal at 5 p.m. or in the evening. But you, who have told us that you're diabetic, you're welcome to eat a meal. Then we'll make sure you get the calories that you need. But somebody else might say, I'm a diabetic. I've been in coma 3 times this year from poorly managed diabetes. Can I safely go to a Vipassana course? The answer is not really. We're not doctors. We're not diabetologists. If your diabetes is so-called fragile, that is, you go into coma unintentionally, even if you're maintaining your medication properly, you don't belong in a 10-day residential retreat with no doctor, no family members there. Now, the same kinds of questions could apply to the mental safety of meditation. For example, someone can say, I'm a healthy person doing pretty well in life, but unfortunately, I have severe panic attacks. And one of the reasons I'm interested in taking meditation is I've heard that meditation reduces your anxiety. So I'd like to take it. Maybe it'll reduce my panic. On the other hand, the thought of taking that 10-day course throws me into a panic. I don't know if I can handle it. So don't try to decide this on your own. That's too hard. You don't even know what Vipassana is. Make an application to a center and solicit that an assistant teacher will respond to who you are, what your problem is, and whether they feel it's safe for you to come. And there could be 2 answers to the panic patient. One answer could be, this sounds quite ideal for you. I think Vipassana will help you a lot. But another panic patient, you might say, this doesn't sound safe for you. You could end up feeling panicky and lonely. And the people who are there to help you are wonderful, kind, good souls, but they're not professional psychologists who can help you deal with panic. Why don't you wait until you get better treatment, more effective psychotherapy, more effective medications, and then when your panic level is not as severe, then you'll be more advised to come. So the answer is safety is a judicial rehashing of who you are with a teacher or assistant teacher who can help you make that decision. It's not safe for everybody. It's not safe for the brittle diabetic. It's not safe for someone in an acute panicking phase. It's not safe for someone who's had certain kinds of severe physical or mental problems.
Thank you. That's a very wise response to dealing with a situation like this. Dr. Fleischman, in your writings, you build a case for and you highlight the natural body-mind integration as being powerful. Yet, on the other hand, you caution that the mind-body itself is becoming dogmatic. It's becoming a dogmatic problem. Why is this so? And Padmini Ranganathan, who is a member of our audience from the US, she asks a somewhat similar question, a related question, and she has a similar inquiry on the use of mind, intellect, energy to deal with physical, biological symptoms, example, pain, uh, vagus nerve disorder symptoms, or even anxiety. So, can you throw some light on this?
Sure. Um, let's see. The mind-body problem originally in the West was a scientific dilemma that derived from the fact that as the end of the Renaissance was bringing forth the scientific worldview, the scientific method into Western civilization, the belief was that the mind and the body are two separate things. That belief derived in turn from the Judeo-Christian tradition, in which the mind and body were considered separate and separable. A person died, but they went to heaven. Their body was gone, but there was still a mind. And that led science to a dualistic view. There was something called a mind, something called a body, and they were different. That view was so powerful, embedded in Western civilization, that it lasted right into the middle of the 20th century. When I was studying science in the middle of the 20th century, it was a constant emphasis. Hey, students, there is no mind and body separate. The mind is a product of the same physical substrate as the body. The mind is a product of the body. The mind evolved in tissues that use energy and matter, and the mind is part of the physical world. And that was new when I was going to school. So let's say that's 50 years ago. Then this new paradigm took over, the new paradigm being that the mind and body are an integrated entity, each influencing the other. So that, for example, if I'm ill, it could be that I'm ill for mental reasons, or it could be that I'm ill for physical reasons, but mental reasons are an important secondary influence. And examples are numerous. People who feel ill have symptoms of illness, and then through changing their mental outlook, getting certain kinds of psychotherapy, certain kinds of insight, and then through the modern westernized forms of meditation like mindfulness, treating or partly treating or contributing to the treatment of their physical illness with mental treatments as well that were helpful, so-called psychosomatic, or now widely known as meditation. But we had, in the tradition of S N Goenka, we had a warning from the teachers earlier, Goenkaji's own teachers, who warned that in the West, meditation would be turned into a cure. Meditation is not intended to cure disease in the tradition of Goenkaji, Ubaken, and their meditation ancestors. Instead, meditation is intended to be a life path to produce well-being. In the old phrasing, we could say purification of the mind. That's the phrase Goenkaji uses. I would say improved development as a human being in all dimensions, increasing one's humane capacities intellectually, emotionally, intuitively, and relationally. And this development or growth is the goal of Vipassana, rather than treatment of illness. We don't want to be an appendage to the healthcare system. Now, many meditations are appendages to the healthcare systems, and I'm not condemning that. Quite the contrary. It sounds wonderful to me that there's a new and better way to help sick people get better. But Vipassana 10-day courses are not intended for those kinds of transformations. They're intended to put people down a way of life. When you're sick, you can practice Vipassana. When you're healthy, you can practice Vipassana. But making your Vipassana an intentional healthcare treatment is deviating away from the path of the Buddha, that meditation is a way of life under all circumstances and not merely a treatment. So I would say that's where the bifurcation in goals of meditation can be understood.
So meditation can help in one's well-being, and but it's not really intended as a cure. At least that's the standpoint of Vipassana meditation.
Correct.
Right. So in one of your essays, you write, and I'm just going to quote that. You write that the heightened sense of personal peace that is the most sought after benefit of meditation comes from the practiced ability to know, like, and accept oneself. And there is a related question from a member of the audience. She's Pratiksha from India, and she asks, there is a thin line between letting things be, accepting the situation as it is, and fighting for change. How can one decide when conflicted with the dilemma between the two? And my question to you is, the acceptance of oneself, isn't this way more difficult than it sounds?
Yeah, great questions. All very, very good and germane. So just to answer your question, absolutely. Yes, it's difficult. How about degrees of change? So instead of saying I don't accept myself or I do accept myself, how about saying in any day, different degrees of self-acceptance and non-self-acceptance will play across the screen of my mind and body. And we look in Vipassana, we look for continued growth in that dimension, but we don't look for absolute, total, 100% to zero change. So let's look at this gradual growth in this ability. In Vipassana, you are observing two things about yourself almost all the time. I say almost all the time, maybe some of the time you're completely spaced out, not meditating, forgetting you're even meditating. But in the times that you are meditating, you're observing your body. And as you observe your body, you're stirring up thoughts in your mind by being aware of the sensations of your body. You also are gaining awareness of the reactivity of your mind to those body sensations. So you're aware of the body and the mind's reactivity to the body. In those moments, those meditative moments, the goal is to not react to what is happening in your body or your mind. That's self-acceptance of mind and body. So the goal of meditation is self-acceptance of mind and body. But it's a long path because every second, your mind is changing, your body is changing. There are millions of thoughts, feelings, ideas, emotions, hopes, fears, daydreams, worries, memories, anticipations, all going through your mind at different parts of the day, on different days. And depending on who you are and how you meditate across your life stage, across all the life stages, and different features of yourself will or won't rise up. Not everything rises up in every course. In 10 days, you can't get through all the thoughts and feelings and emotions, and memories and anticipations and fears that you have. So, yes, it's a long path. Yes, it's harder than it sounds. But that doesn't mean there aren't degrees of progress. It's hard. Like being a literate person is very hard. You have to start when you're 5 years old and you keep going. And even when you're 21 or 25, you may not really have attained full literacy. So it's a long path, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to be literate. Being a good person is very hard. And even when you're a very mature, senior, aged person, you still need to be working on how you influence the people around you. But you shouldn't give up on it just because it's a long path. So self-acceptance is a long path, but don't give up on it. Um, there was a sub question in there, I think, that I haven't fully answered.
Yes, Pratiksha asks, so there's a thin line between letting
Oh,
things
excellent.
be, accepting the
Yeah,
situation as it is, and fighting
great,
for change. How
great.
can
That's a
one
wonderful
decide
question.
when conflicted with the dilemma between the two?
Okay. I think you said this questioner is from India, did you say?
Yes, questioner is from India. She's Pratiksha
Right.
from India.
Okay. I would consider that to be the quintessential American question. And it's nice to see that it really has no cultural boundaries. And I'm quite wrong. It's an Indian question as well as American question. So when I started meditation, Susan and I went to India after I completed my training. We took our first course with Goenkaji together. And the big anxiety on my mind in that course was, isn't all of this Indian stuff learning to gaze at your navel? That was the expression in the 1960s by which the Western gloss, the newspaper level thinking in the Western Hemisphere, was condemning the emergence and arrival of Eastern culture values like meditation as it was arriving in the West. Oh, it's terrible. You're just gazing at your navel, meaning you're making yourself feel good simply by looking at yourself and manipulating something about yourself, and you're not really contributing to changing the world. How contemptible, how selfish, how childish. So that concern was on my mind since before my first course. I was heavily embedded in my medical training and my Western civilization background. Of course, within the first course, I realized this was not a mature view on either side of what the West or the East was talking about. So when one is learning self-acceptance, one is learning self-acceptance. That's not the same thing as saying everything in the world should stay exactly the way it is. And if it doesn't stay that way, I don't care. And if it's going to improve, I don't care. And if it's going to get worse, don't bother me with that problem. That's not what meditation is saying. Meditation is saying learning to be able to access all of who you are, which includes your vulnerabilities, your failings, your weaknesses, your doubts, your uncertainties, and your strengths, your faith, your hopes, your commitments, your challenges, your concerns. You're able to access all of those without censoring them out of who you are. Full awareness of body and mind, full awareness of self, and some degree of self-acceptance. Not really fully accepting everything, but moving in that direction. That should give a person, in theory, ideally, optimal adaptive capacity. All that you are can be called up by you. You are aware of it. You're familiar with it. You know it. When you finish with your 10 days or 30 days or 5 years or 15 years or 30 years of meditation, you might well expect to have greater access to all the potentials within you. And there's no reason why you wouldn't leverage all those potentials in a constructive, dynamic, transformative way in the world. For example, if you were a psychiatrist, you might have some different insights, attitudes, or values into people based upon your insights, attitudes, or values about yourself. And you might use those insights to be more effective as a psychiatrist. The same thing could be true if you were a social worker. The same thing could be true, in theory, if you were a senator or a governor. So meditation is not learning to accept yourself and not give a damn about anything else. It's learning to accept yourself and bring that self-acceptance alive and sizzling into the world where it can have some impact. speaking as a psychiatrist, I would say the very important, powerful impact I got was meditating year after year, course after course. I realized how many foolish, ignorant, impaired limitations existed in my personality. And that gave me the feeling when I met many people with many problems, that person is talking about a problem that I have also. It's called experiential empathy, not pity, not pseudo empathy, but actually being aware in myself of what this other person was talking about and going, you think you have a problem? I've got the same problem. So that means your problem is at least partially solvable, and I can understand it and help you with it. That's an example of being aware of difficult to like aspects of oneself that one discovers in meditation, and yet finding that awareness catalytic and useful in actively helping in the world.
Thank you. What you just said, resonates a lot with me because in my own experience, I have found it difficult to, at times, accept myself. But over a period of time, yes, I've come to that. And I've also come to the realization that accepting one's own self is a stepping stone to self-transformation. It's just the realization of that is difficult, but yes, it does dawn every now and then. You do have that flash of insight. Uh,
Wonderful.
thank you very much. So, Dr. Fleischman, I'm just trying to, do a time check. There is one very crucial question because there's a lot of questions, a lot of audience members have come up with this question, and I want to then proceed to the next section. So, if you could quickly, comment on this, I'm just going to read it out. There's very, very many audience members who have come up with this. So Shweta Cunningham from Canada asks, could meditation not be advisable to certain groups of people to practice? If so, why? And then in your essays and your books, I recollect that you have answered this question and you say that meditation is not for everyone, particularly those who have been through past trauma. So what options do such people have to restore their well-being? And related to this, we've had questions from others, like Alice from Switzerland, who has asked about epigenetics. Are there could that be an alternative to meditation? And Dr. Rashmi Minocha from India has inquired about Ho'oponopono and Joe Dispenza's work. So there's a lot of ideas that people have come up with. But in brief, can you tell us why do you feel that meditation is not for everyone? And what do these people have as alternatives?
Okay. So um, that goes back to the question we did deal with on the safety of meditation. People for whom it's unsafe shouldn't take it. And uh, giving an example from the psychological world, I don't feel it's not exactly correct that people who've had trauma shouldn't meditate. So when I was talking about the safety of meditation a few minutes ago, I was showing how, or I was hoping to show how, the same word, trauma, can cover different things. It's only an English language word that we paste over a person's inner experience. So two people can say, I had severe trauma. I had severe trauma, but they had very different experiences. And for one of them, why not take a meditation course? That's a good thing to do. And the other person, I don't think this is right for you right now. Better not take it. It won't be safe. You're in the category of people who shouldn't take it. And yet the word is the same. So we want to get beyond the word or the label to the actual human experience of the individual person. Let's look at using trauma as our example of a group of people who shouldn't take it. If there's somebody who may come to a course and have very terrible memories of something really bad that happened to them, that's a traumatic person with a traumatic memory. And then the next question that comes up in the assessment of safety that should be done between the student and the assistant teacher who will be conducting the course, or the assistant teacher at that center who's assigned to answering student questions about safety. The next question would be, if that comes onto your mind, those traumatic memories that are associated with body sensations because all trauma mutually co-affects the mind and body. That's one of the definitions of trauma. Both mind and body are traumatized. So that person's having a traumatic memory. It may rise to the surface on a course. The next question is, will you be able to meditate when that's happening? And you can get two answers. Somebody can say, well, I could try. I think it sounds really hard, but I'd like to give it a try. And somebody could say, if that comes on my mind, I am knocked flat emotionally. I can't do anything. I just feel overwhelmed, broken down, the trauma's too big. The first person might want to try a meditation course. The second person, why should they take a meditation course? It will only be agony and won't be helpful. So the name trauma doesn't tell us whether that person is in the group who doesn't prosper in a meditation course or not. Um, But yes, there are groups of people. And how do you find them? The best way to find them is not by a single word label. It's by this dialogical conversation about what a meditation course is like, what it would be like for you if you took it, what might come on the surface for you if you took it, and would you be able to deal with it during the course or not? Or maybe you're unsure. Then there could be more questions going down the line. For people who are ill physically, mentally, traumatized, not traumatized, some other name or label, which we don't want to get focused on names or labels. We want to go deeper. Whatever the reason is for their inability to take a meditation course, sure, there's hundreds of things that that person can do. If they're physically ill, we have people called doctors. If they're mentally ill, we have many different kinds of healers and helpers. And the United States and India today, both, we have people who derive from Western psychotherapeutic traditions. We have people who derive from Eastern and meditation traditions using other kinds of meditation, not Vipassana. And there's no reason why people can't practice those. So to feel that Vipassana is the only avenue to health and well-being, I certainly don't think that's true.
Do you have any view on epigenetics?
Yeah, it's an emerging understanding. We were talking about emergence, and epigenetics is an emerging understanding in which we're overcoming another prejudice of Western science. One of the prejudices of Western science that I grew up with was the genetic code and personal experience are two different things. You cannot change a mouse's genes by the way you do or don't feed or pet or play with that mouse. That mouse has the same genes no matter what its experiences are. That's true of each one of us. Our genes are unchangeable by experience. That was the dogma I was raised with. And then epigenetics came along that said our experiences impact the way the genetic code is read out, not necessarily changing the code, but changing the way the code is activated in the cells of the body. There are silencers of genetic information. There are augmenters of genetic information that both, either of those silencers or augmenters, can be activated by experiences that a person has. So, yes, that's a possible uh, way of looking at some of the deeper changes that do happen to people. People change their whole way of life frequently when they become established meditators, frequently. And the change of life tends to follow in a certain direction. It's very rare that somebody becomes a meditator and says, my experience was I want to eat a lot of red meat. It's quite common that people become meditators and feel, I think I'm going to let go of this meat eating thing. It's not essential to feel that way, but it's a common impact. I had a neighbor who lived in the house next door who took a meditation course. She knew Susan and myself. We told her very little about the course. She came home from her first course and said, I had a weird experience. I really didn't quite understand it, but I've given up meat and alcohol. I don't want to do those things anymore. Do you know why that happened to me? My honest answer was no. I don't know why that happened to you. But there was some change in this person in a meditative lifestyle direction that happened right away. Is that an epigenetic change? I have no idea.
Right. Thank you. So I'm going to move on to our next section, which is meditation and social progress. But then I realized that you have answered many of the questions that I had for you when we were speaking about evolutionary biology and the future of evolution and the reasons why, excuse me, I have a bad throat. And the reasons why, the three views that you gave, the three different perspectives that you gave. So I think some amount of that has already been covered. So I have, one question for you on this section. And again, I'm going to quote one of your essays. In The Power of Small Changes, you write, meditation is a mental activity that can increase autonomy and independence, but it can also open a conduit to dependence upon the social system from which the meditation instructions derive. Could you please elaborate on this? And an associated question, can meditation be addictive?
Good. Well, uh, the college I went to had a famous expert on um, fundamentalism. And so I became interested in fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is those groups of religions where people read a text, a holy text, and then believe word for word that this text is true and disbelieve every other kind of way of thinking about the world. Um, we used to think in the 19th century, it was thought that fundamentalism was disappearing and was being replaced by more complex ways of thinking that don't rest upon one text. Maybe they rest on two texts or 100 texts or 1,000 texts. Uh, Richly educated, richly thought out people with uh, complex, wise ways of integrating their life with the world. But it turns out that large groups of people take great comfort from fundamentalism. If you have a stated way of being and you follow that way of being, if you're a non-examining, non-thinking, non-curious person, you gain from this text-based fundamentalism very secure, comforting feeling about life. I know the answer to everything. I know what's right and wrong about everything. All I have to do is look at this one simple answer, and I get all the other answers that come along with it. And so, any system, what's the cause of the fundamentalist drive in people who meditate? The answer is it's the same cause as the fundamentalist drive in people who do something else. There's a group of human beings who take comfort in a simplified, one dimensional description of life and reality. And that emerges in every human group. It emerges in every religion. There are fundamentalists, but there are richer, non fundamentalist believers. And it happens in secular systems. There is secular fundamentalism. For example, Marxism. It's not a theology, but it's a text-based religious-like phenomena which people get absolutely orthodox answers that reduce the complexity of life in their mind to this one way of thinking. And so meditation has a group of people who feel that reading certain texts, believing in certain ideas, mouthing certain answers to certain questions gives them the security and comfort they've been looking for. That's very different than using meditation as a tool of discovery about oneself, where constantly new vistas are opened, in which there are certain rules about how to practice, but there are not single dimensional, one way looking at the meaning of yourself, your life, human life, your relationship to society. So there is that drift everywhere. That drift is in meditation. I hope it won't take over meditation. I don't think it will.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to move to some audience questions. We've had a flood of questions, so I apologize if we're not able to answer every single question that has been posed, either beforehand or in today's live session. But I have a few questions, and wherever possible, I've been trying to also combine questions. So the first of the audience question is it is from Angela from Canada, and she asks, her question is, as a practitioner of Vipassana in the Goenka tradition, I learned about the reality of impermanence, of Vedana, in bracket sensations, as well as the concept of sankharas, in bracket emotional reactions, which I think of as conditioning. How well do these ideas translate to the West? Is it even necessary to understand these concepts to get the benefits of the practice?
It's not necessary to understand the concepts. In Goenkaji's early teaching, he was always reminding us that many of the meditators in India, particularly in the early days, were semi-literate or even illiterate people. They didn't really have a conceptual linguistic framework for meditation. They just practiced it the way you would practice plowing a field. And these people were just as able to benefit as a highly educated person. The benefits come from the practice, not from the intellectual development of the practitioner. So, no, Angela, you don't have to understand those concepts. But as it happens, the two concepts that you picked, anicca, impermanence, and sankhara and vedana, those are three, not two, all of those concepts translate easily into Western ideas. You could say that we are impermanent. Everybody knows we're impermanent. Um, but we're not preaching that. We're asking people to experience that. So we're impermanent and we have many thoughts and feelings. Those are our sankharas. And they are also encoded in or related to our body sensations. That is our Vedana. So all of that makes supreme sense in Western thinking just by making a one word transition from one language to another. But it's not necessary to do all that work. It's just necessary to do the actual practice of the meditation.
Thank you. I'm going to move to our next question, and um, Shane Dowd from the US, and also a related question from Shweta Cunningham. These questions have been combined, and so the question reads as follows. And Shane is referring to a book called The Altered Traits by Richard Davidson. So he says this book, Altered Traits, really resonated with me because it emphasizes long-term trait changes rather than temporary altered states. His research, largely with Tibetan monks, suggests durable changes in qualities like attention and emotional regulation. I'm curious whether there is any comparable scientific research, especially on Vipassana practitioners, and more broadly, what can modern science responsibly say about the long-term trait changes Vipassana seems to cultivate?
Fantastic. Well, I say fantastic because the book that you just referred to earlier, Shanti, that I wrote, called The Power of Small Changes, has the exact same intention. So I believe, or let's say Goenkaji taught, I believe in this. I experience it in myself, and I'm writing about the idea that the best gains of Vipassana occur gradually, cumulatively, over time. And people looking for a rapid transformation are going to be disappointed with Vipassana. Actually, you do get rapid transformation. I got it right away in my first course. Many people do. But you don't anchor it. It's kind of like a flag has gone up on the flagpole, but that's very different than you're now living this way of life. So you get these rapid transformations, but they need the added embedding in your character. And there's a slow accretion, development of character transformations that hopefully do occur. I would say I feel they have occurred in me. Many, probably millions of people feel they've occurred in them through Vipassana. So yes, this question goes down the avenue that Goenkaji encouraged and that I would follow up with. There's no research on Vipassana because we are not a university. We're a group of people. Every single center is run by unpaid people. It's hard enough to get these people to have the free time and energy to give a bit of their life to the students who are meditating and run a course, which takes so much time and energy, and then ask them, let's add on some scientific studies as well. So we don't do that because of our status as a non-university, non-professional, non-organization. Non-organization means when something changes, let's say, in the way a course may be taught in Poland or Sri Lanka, that doesn't necessarily affect the way it's taught in California or Texas. So for all those reasons, we don't have quality scientific research on Vipassana, and that may be disappointing to some people. We base ourselves on the experiences that people have, the transformations that they feel, and the life changes they make rather than on scientific data. It's similar to what's the scientific data that shows if you spend $60,000 a year, which is what it costs to go to American university now, what's the scientific data that you live a better or happier life? There is none. There is no data on that. But people still spend those enormous amounts on American colleges and universities. So in Vipassana, let's say you only have to spend 10 days, not $60,000, and the results are up to what you experience, not what the data tells. But the data on Tibetan monks is very interesting. I don't feel it's contributory to our understanding, however. The reason is that's a very highly selected subgroup of people. If you go to training with a National Football League team and practice throwing a football, will you make the same gains as the people who are National Football League professional quarterbacks? Obviously, a very highly subselected group of people will have a different experience than average people. What Tibetan monks experience in meditation won't tell us much about the rest of us.
Thank you.
But
That is a
yeah,
very, very powerful insight. Yeah, thank you. I'm coming to our next question, and this is from Sarika from India, and she asks, is meditation sufficient for transformation, or is it only effective when embedded within a larger framework of ethical conduct, discipline, and service? I think you partly responded to it, but can you go over this again, please?
I would say meditation without those other qualities might be of some limited help. But it's like saying, what if I eat only one food substance for the rest of my life? Will I live or die? Maybe it depends what the food substance is. It's sure not a healthy diet. It's sure not optimizing your biological health. You should eat all the different kinds of food substances. So meditation that's embedded in ethics, that's embedded in a community of meditators, that's embedded in helping new meditators learn, that is serving. All those cultural matrix components of meditation enrich and give more power to the meditation practice itself.
All right, thank you. The next question I have is from a doctor, a medical doctor from India, Dr. Sachin Deshmukh. And he asks, what is the effect of Vipassana on one's sympathetic overdrive? And can you please also explain to our audience what a sympathetic overdrive is?
Okay. Well, um, going back to the previous questions about scientific research, I can't answer that question scientifically because I don't have a scientific study that impacts that particular question. But let's answer it in a probabilistic way. This is probably true, not necessarily proven to be true. Sympathetic overdrive means something like the following. We're animals who have the capacity to relax, to be at peace, to go to sleep, to put our heads on other mammals in the same cave with us and sit around the fire and relax and maybe do some artwork painting on the walls of the cave. We're mammals born to be at peace and relax and be comfortable at home in our cave in our house. But we're also mammals who are born to be hunters, fighters, defend our territory, defend our families, defend our cave. We're able to be ferocious and aggressive. When we're being ferocious and aggressive, our nervous system has to change and be very different than it was when we were being peaceful in our cave. And in some modern scientific language, we can say that requires sympathetic overdrive, that is, strong arousal of certain parts of the nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, that enable us to be more aggressive and potentially violent. Yes, we would like to think that meditation reduces sympathetic overdrive. What leads to sympathetic overdrive? How about becoming a driver in Mumbai, New York, London? We are conditioned in our modern societies to, at times, be very aggressive, very competitive. And if we do that repetitively, there's some danger of entering into sympathetic overdrive. Overdrive means you can't shut it off. Once you've turned it on, it just rolls on and rolls on and rolls on. We would like to think that the Vipassana meditator who's just driven on the East Side Highway in New York, or is just trying to get to the airport in Mumbai and driving their car there, that person may well feel annoyed, irritated, stirred to rather aggressive driving tactics. But we'd like to think they're not. But even if they are, we would like to think that that meditator can then reduce that overdrive, turn it back down, return to that peaceful site in the cave, in the home, in the mind, where we can feel a reduction of aggression, of competition, of potential violence. So, yes, that's the hope of Vipassana to do that.
All right. And I presume that, well, there's a time dimension to this also, right? It's something which may also happen
Sure.
gradually, correct?
Yes, correct. It could happen in a minute or it could happen in an hour. Ideally, it happens quickly.
All right. Yep. Thank you. There's, I think, just two more questions. One which is posted in the Q&A box, and I'm going to try and make this contextual to our session today. So, Guillaume from France asks, do you think it is possible that the actual accumulation of climate disasters combined with economic crises and political craziness worldwide can trigger the emergence of a new way of thinking, interacting, and living together? And can meditation in any way have a role in that? Is my add-on question to that. Is this something that could help us deal with this meta crisis in a better way?
Okay. This question begins with the sentence, do you think?
Yes.
So it's asking me about my thoughts, not about the factual reality of what's going to happen in the world. I can say I have no idea about the factual reality of what's going to happen in the world. Do I think? Yes, I do. I do agree exactly with the implications, hopes, and wishes that have been described. That is, as people are confronted with the fact that their previous manners of thinking and living are bankrupt and require change, first there'll be resistance to that. Hey, I don't want to change. I want to keep things exactly the way they are. Why? Because I'm comfortable and familiar with it. As that denial is ruptured by the power of the negative cycle of, let's say, climate disasters like fires, floods, etc., pandemics, that may catalyze a rupture of the denial, a recognition of a need for changing paradigms in all these ways of living. That is, the way we eat, the way we drive, the way we communicate, and the way we think, the way we feel, the way we interact. And as part of that widespread revolution in new ways of thinking, feeling, and living, acting, using resources, traveling, communicating, as part of all that, Vipassana meditation has a certain power, I believe. Do you think? I think. I don't know. I think that Vipassana has a unique power. What is that unique power that I would like to attribute to Vipassana? It's quite a substantial, traditional, rich, well-lived, long-practiced method of self-transformation. It's got a long history. It's got pedigree. I like it. I think it's helpful. So I feel that it's both learnable. An average person can learn it. I learned it to some degree. I've learned it. But it's also got this uh, great momentum traveling with it. And this momentum may help it be an active player in those upcoming transformations. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to be a fundamentalist. I wouldn't want to say, all you need to do is Vipassana and the world will turn out okay. I don't think so at all. There have to be changes in all those other domains that I mentioned. Everybody knows that is transportation, communication, consumption, etc.
Hey, that's a very appropriate answer. Thank you so much. There's a final question for you, and it's actually an audience question, but it was very meaningful. So I want to come back to Sarika from India, and she asks, after 50 years of Vipassana practice, what inner habit or illusion still requires the most vigilance for you?
I generally, I've been asked this question many times, and I generally answer in this way. I think the hardest thing in Vipassana practice in daily life, not the hard thing when you're sitting taking a course and you're going through, let's say, hard memories or hard feelings, and how to use meditation to work with those. That's the hard part of learning on a meditation course. The hard part of daily life when you're a meditator is right speech. Right speech means speaking honestly at the right moment, in the right tone of voice, with the right attitude, tailored to the listener so that they can actually hear it, and with an attitude of goodwill in your heart. How can you activate that in all the conditions of life every day when people are annoying you, irritating you, causing trouble and obstruction for you, or even helping you in daily life? For example, if you're a doctor, you're dealing with someone who's sick. If there's no problem, why would they come to you? And there's a problem. And in that moment, a person may ask you a question and say, how sick am I? Am I dying? What's my problem? Well, do you answer them by saying something like, well, I'm a Vipassana meditator. I'm going to be honest. You're sick as a dog. You're probably going to be a dead duck by tonight. You don't answer in that way because right speech is honesty, but it's more than honesty. It's finding the right tone of voice, the right timing, the right way of saying something, being attuned to what the listener can really hear at that moment in their moment of fear or dread or nausea. So every day we have hundreds of moments in which we're speaking to other people, and the way we're speaking is impacting the world and therefore impacting us, since the world acts back upon us as we act upon it. And right speech is the number one vehicle through which we encounter the wisdom that we have developed or that we've failed to develop as meditators. That's the way I experience my life.
And if everyone experienced life the way you did, then social media today would be completely unrecognizable, isn't it?
I am a non-participant in the social media. I find it got more problems than benefits. There are great things on the internet. Social media is not one of them.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Before we wind up this webinar, I want to just convey my thanks. Firstly, my heartfelt thanks for your taking out the time to be with us today, and also on behalf of my audience, for providing us with great insights, with sharing your gems of wisdom, sharing your merits, your peace, your harmony. So thank you so much for that. Very, very grateful for you having taken out the time. As a token of gratitude, Shaktify is going to be planting 12 saplings for you on your behalf in the state of
Beautiful. Thank you.
Maharashtra in India, and you will soon get an email, giving you all the details for that. So
Thank you so
I
much.
want to thank you, Dr. Fleischman. Really, thank you very much for being with us, and also to our audience from all parts of the world, and particularly those from India, where it's like almost 11 p.m. right now. Yeah, so thank you all. A good night and a good day to all of you, and let's be in touch. Yeah, thank
Great.
you, and
Shakti,
yes.
let me say one thing. Thank you so much for preparing so well, understanding the questions so well, making appropriate, helpful, proper questions, and probing me to say the things I would like to say, which I don't always get a chance to say unless the person asking me the questions has really studied the topic and generated good, provocative ways of getting into it. So thank you for all your preparation and your insights.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure interacting with you, Dr. Fleischman. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Bye, everyone. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.